We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such. I know y'all tired of it, but we got a new season of The Past. Welcome to season 8, the Mamba Year. Podcast available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of your podcast platforms. Here you'll get a dose of content related to tech, the productivity world, and most importantly, how to be a better you. The theme for this year, personally, is receiving grace. And we definitely want to do better with receiving it and being open to being a better us from who we were a year ago. So this is season 8 of The Past, and I hope you all enjoy.
We are back with another daily walk and unpack and lifelong living lessons of any sort. Feel like I ain't did a walk cast in like forever, so thought I would I want to say unretire, but come back to what I know, and as the age old famous phrase goes, make the main thing the main thing. So uh be back. Miss y'all. Hopefully y'all missed me. I know it's kind of a unique timing or a unique circumstance since literally yesterday, I believe, I did my finally caved in and did the thing, because maybe this might be a lesson without me knowing that it's a lesson, to invest time in or set a, and this is more of a reflection note, but also a thing that I need to really get back into again, which is for one, maybe I should start my timer for my walk, or I won't get any credit for what I'm doing right now. But while I'm doing that, I will say it it becomes key in your life to, if you're like, in my case, it's more of a, all right, I know that I need to record or work on my podcast. However, I will find myself in this like sticky situation where I've done the recording, but don't have the strength or the wherewithal to do the um to do the editing. And before anyone jumps up and goes crazy, it's not that I can't do the editing, it's not that I don't want to do the editing. It's time, and I won't say space, I'll say opportunity. How many people who have, and I've shared this endless amounts of times, people are very eager to, mention the element. I don't even want to call it the element of surprise, but the factor of recording a podcast. They'll say, "Oh, just sit down, turn your mic on, and do a show." But what no one looks at is the offline effort or the behind the scenes effort that comes with doing a podcast. It's two It's two parts of podcasting that everyone makes seem easy. And that's what I'm gonna talk about on this walk today. And this might be a conversation I've thrown in other shows, but I'm throwing this out now because it's probably been one of the most interesting reflections with doing podcasting for close to, if not over 8 years. And that is the recording itself. Like the getting in front of the microphone and talking, for a lot of people, they got that part down. That's like second to none. Like, all right, I can do this. I'm good. But what they don't have, well, I'm sorry, let me say it. And what they also can do is share the link or have the link of the finished product ready to distribute or manage in whatever capacity. Those things are manageable and can be handled in your sleep. And in some instances, that's what the consumer thinks of. They're like, oh, you got a show together. You was able to get all these messages out there, X, Y, and Z. And to be able to get folks to come and support your content is such an amazing thing, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, you got it all like because anytime it's so funny. Podcasts are almost equivalent to like music in the sense of when you tell someone you've done a podcast or you've done or you do music, they'll ask you like, well, where can I hear it? Or either they'll ask you where can they hear it, or they'll come back with, is it on? And then they'll name different distribution platforms. So like, is it on Spotify? Is it on Apple? Is it on YouTube? Um, and your answer can tell whether someone's going to be able to listen to it or think to listen to it. And wholehearted truth and just outright honesty, it's a very simple breakdown with distribution, but people are not thinking of those factors because they want content. And I 100% understand them on that, and I don't really make a big stink or a big fuss about it one way or the other. Um, your so to reiterate that part of the conversation, your sit down and talk and your distribution are the elements of, hey, we got the podcast going. All of the other parts are the parts that nobody thinks about. And those parts are, like I mentioned, what I'm going to get into today, that anyone who says, oh, I could do a podcast, they lying to you. And the reason I'm adamant with that message or with that statement is because a podcast is not as easy as it looks on TV, on the internet, on YouTube, wherever. First and foremost, and I promise I say this because I can say it, but your distribution or your topic flow is not going to be everyone else's topic flow. Of course, Mother Nature wants to be nature, but you learn with time what works for you and what works for your style. And why I say that is because some people aren't good preparers in podcasting. And when I say preparing, I mean the pre-pod, even if it's just you or even if it's other people, pre-production or pre-pod talk is a very strong skill of mastery in doing so. And I can 100% speak on this because I've been I've seen all extremes of handling this element or this layer of podcasting. And sometimes it can be a lot, or it could be a battle to say the least. Give me 1 second, y'all. All right, y'all. Sorry about that. Uh had the wanted to make sure that I got what I need to get taken care of. If you know, we'll leave it at that. But pre-production, like it, love it, hate it, leave it, live with it, live without it, be your best friend, worst nightmare. Pre-production for a lot of podcasts is what makes the podcast be beneficial. And why I say that, or why I'm talking about that now, is you are going to you're going to have multiple things happen before a show. You're going to have people who are going to call you, like, as someone who's been doing the shows for a long time. It's not like, now if you have set times of the day that you're working on your show, then you may have it where, cool, I'm recording in this time frame and I'm gonna be unavailable for this amount of hours or whatever the case may be. And some people will be like, okay, I understand, do you, it's all good. um I thought about this just now that the update is out there, or that I've been using a beta of it. um Testing the generative or assisted um set down would be probably one of the best things to try over my current recording journey. Because do not disturb, trust me, do not disturb is very explicit, but on slash sell 101, people know, oh, if I call them and they don't answer, I can just call right back and I'll get through. But you may not want a call. Like, the worst thing to have is you're in the midst of something and someone's calling. And I had it kind of had it happen yesterday where I was running a group or meeting and I had someone call, which wasn't a big deal because, number one, I didn't have my phone nearby anyway. And two, um, I saw it and kind of was just like, all right, it's there, but I'm not gonna like let it be the tell all be all. And I kept pushing. And eventually got in touch with them and got everything straight. Um, but pre-production, a good preparatory element when it comes to recording. And why I'm sharing that, or why I'm talking about it, is because if you go, and some people do it and it works for them, but if you go into a show and just start recording with no outline, no format, no style, and if you can freestyle that way, I got none but the utmost respect for you because that's your that's your bag and that's your style. But I know now, especially with me doing shows for as long as I have, more, way more appreciative of the pre-pod or the pre-preparation, or just the preparation. You don't have to be pre-preparation, because if you preparing before the preparation, there's a lot that you got going on. However, for instance, workflowy has become my like tool of choice for my podcast. And I think why it's become that way, and I think I talk about this like albums every single time, whether it's in a walkcast, whether it's in the podcast, whatever. But it, for lack of a better term, it does the dirty work for me of, okay, these are my key notes or key topics that I want to talk about. So I have them already written down, laid out, bullet points, and I don't need to feel like unorganized with what I'm about to talk about on the show. And that's also kind of why it wouldn't make a difference one way or the other, but that's kind of why I've not done video yet for the podcast, because setting up and preparing video, whole different monster on its own. But pre-production, pre-pod, you want to have that part kind of ironed out or situated to some degree, because then that helps like the rest of the podcast process like come together. You have to think of like with guests being on, you have to think of any possible element of surprise that could be in the midst of you doing the show. Like you will have someone that is joining you on the show. And many times it's a habit, but it's like just a reality. They'll say, oh, it's my first time. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to react, things of that nature. The only thing that is probably, now this is a personal thing, is if a call comes in during a show, but the call is a little bit more than expected. Um, and sometimes you can have people, look, people gonna call. People who, and I'm gonna say this from a two-sided perspective. There's you've been doing recording, you recorded podcasts, you know the routine, and you basically looking at it as no calls, not looking for anybody to reach out. And then the other perspective is I've been on a few shows, but I also have things coming up. I've had it plenty of times where people will be on my show or just notice it during the show, and they're famously multitasking, task switching, doing different things. But you mainly want to be sure, like, especially if you're having conversations, that people are aware of what's being talked about. Because if you ask a question, the last thing you need is someone to like be delayed answering the question because they're doing something else. So just thinking of things or elements like that can be a big factor with the show. So that's all pre-production. Now, pre-production or pre-pod is not the same as audio check. Because then you got to check audio. So a couple of months ago, picked up I think it's called the Vocaster. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a tool that will allow you to record more than like at least two people on a show. Now, why am I bringing this up and what's the importance of this? You want to be sure that your mic works like it needs to. Your guests, if they're talking, you can hear them during the show. Um, and this is another one of those Brian's personal vendettas or stand behinds, because a lot of people will come on the show and not think about it, or you may remind them and they might not think about it. and that is uh, audio feedback. Meaning, if you're being a guest on a show, sure, you're talking and you're doing your conversation all well and dandy, but you may not think about or may not consider the fact that uh, you might be a you might not be sure how quiet or how loud you are when talking during the show. So you want to then factor in, okay, let me adjust the proper levels. Let me make sure you can hear them well enough, or if they're too loud, let me turn them down. Now that's with only two people talking. The last year, and I still remember this conversation from like close to a year ago, where I was telling a friend of mine, like, yeah, I'm looking at the Rode, the Rode mic, and I want to probably get like four of them and have people on, and get get four microphones, get the Rodecaster Pro and all that stuff. And why I'm talking about that, or why I mention it, is because I am definitely all over the place this morning because I'm just like walking, not even realizing that I need to set my watch again for the next walk. Uh, but the Rodecaster or the Rode mics, you may have four people or up to four people. So now you have to factor in everybody's sound or everybody's how they sound on the show. Not forgetting where I came from because I'm never going to allow myself to. You then may have the infamous one mic, one show. Now, the Yeti X has been probably one of my best investments in microphones. So much so to the point that, and I don't mind talking about it now because it's not a big deal. But like, I had someone who was like, "Yeah, since you're using the Rode mic, you can go ahead and let me rock with that Yeti." And I was like, "Not for the amount that I spent, number one, and number two, this is it's still a good microphone to have in the event that anything could happen to my Rode mics." So I've been using, I think the Yeti X has probably been in rotation at least 6 years. I'm saying six, but it's probably not been that long. It's been quite a bit though. I definitely know it was pre-COVID. So like, to be fair, to be more realistic, I'd say five. 2019, I think it was like right before I started school. I remember picking up the Yeti. And why I'm talking about the Yeti so much is because the Yeti gives you that leniency or that ability to, plug in the headphone jack. And what I found to work, and what I always tell people is, it's like, well, I got one microphone, but I got multiple people that are on it on the show that want to talk. And I'm like, okay, all you do is put the microphone, like set the microphone on. I think it's either cardioid, but you want to set it so that it literally can hear all audio around the mic. Now, that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. But this goes back to the headphone part. So there's the headphone adapter or the headphone jack on the Yeti. And what I did was I found the Star. It's like a Star headphone splitter that will let you hook up, I think, like five microphones. Or not five, not microphones, but like five headphones. So everyone can hear the same audio. And I've used it a few times and it's worked wonders. Like, believe me. Um, my main thing is when you tell people wear headphones, it's a reason you're telling them that. And this is not me being petty. This is not me throwing shade. This is me making dialogue relevant to like elements of surprise or things to think about when considering or wanting to do podcasts. So you have that feature or that factor. You also have with audio check, and this is audio check, but this is also like normal factor when recording. And this is one of my another one of those personal pet peeves, but relevant pet peeves is consumption of liquid substances. And not being awkward or being weird, but I'm saying it as what do people drink while recording? Because the reality is, if you do a podcast, I don't care who you are, I don't care how long you've been doing it, you're going to get cotton mouth. It's no, it's no way around it. There's no two-step. There's no, um, there's no one-stop shop for it. It's a real thing. Majority of my shows, I have found the element of just having water has been the best thing ever. Now, my water flow transition has been in different directions, different avenues, different arenas between doing audio, between like buying bottles of water, between just getting some water and ice and putting it in a Stanley, calling it a day. There have been different factors or different ways of water consumption. And why I'm saying that is because that's my go-to. Anyone and everyone who knows, you have Drink Champs. Drink Champs been on the scene for quite a few years. They're drinking alcohol. You have some um, guests who will be on who are like, I don't partake, and they're respectful of it. They still want the show and they still want the content because you still have a legend or you have someone who's like a well-known individual on the show. So it's important to accommodate those individuals while they're on the show. Now, certain drinks I would avoid to reduce breaks or over over dominant or over controlled like breaks in between the show. So you don't want to have people like having to get up every couple minutes because I gotta go to the bathroom or I need this or whatever. Like I would never, under any circumstance, and this is my personal thing, eating during a podcast is a no-no. Period, point blank, non-negotiable. Because the people who are talking don't think about the people who have to edit your eating or your consumption during the show. Water, liquid substances like drink, actually, let's say liquid substances, but drinks that are able to be taken, just turn from the camera, I mean, turn from the mic, do what you do, go on about your business. All well and dandy. So that's your pre-production, that's your audio slash mic check, that's your have everybody prepared for what they need. Like if folks need water, like I usually would say have enough bottles of water ready in case you're a person. Because some people drink water like heavily during the show, and it helps the flow of the show and it helps the flow of the person talking during the show. So it's factors to think about with recording. Again, like I said, you got all that straight. You got your audio check done, your audio testing. Now you do the show. The show gonna go how the show gonna go. The person who has the hardest job is the person who does the audio. So the people who are talking, if you're a one, like in my case, I do my own stuff. So when I'm doing my audio, as I'm recording, if there are things that I've mentioned or things that come up, I try to remember what those key points were during the show. So I'm not like losing it when it comes time to upload. This will be important in a moment and you'll see why. So you do your show, got everything up, got everything finished, hit stop. Now, this is where all the other fun happens. There is Again, I'm sharing all, let me backtrack because I want to be sure I mention this. I'm sharing all of this because, like I said, people at the end of the day go to whatever platform, hear your show, and you got a well-versed, prepared show. But no one thinks of the other elements that leads up to you getting that show on said platform. They know you recorded something, obviously, and they know you posted it. But the other elements, that's what this show is about, or that's what this walkcast is about. And after you've done that recording, now comes all the fun stuff. Personally, now everyone's different and everyone still has to, get how they get stuff. Many people will use what's called marker cues to remember different bullet points or different things that are happening during the show. Now, you may have some factors such as your your audio, like if it's stuff that you're promoting or links that you mentioned, you want to be sure that you have those ready to save during the show. Little stuff like that. Now we're in post production or post recording rather, because post recording and post production are two different things. 'Cause remember, you have pre recording, you have pre production, you have post recording, you have post production. So post recording, first thing that you're looking at is how's the audio. Like if you listen to like small snippets of the show, how much of the background noise got pulled into the show? Too much get pulled in to the point where we need to really ramp it up a little bit and take that out. Or, it's not that noticeable. You should be fine. And you learn your system, your application to help you with reducing or removing that necessary background noise. The next thing, the part that everybody hates, editing. Editing can go one of two ways. Editing can either be, and this post, and let me be 100% clear. Once you hit stop on a podcast, you're not doing all of this right afterward. You're put in a position of going somewhere and having to do this. Or, like I said, if you're at that state, you have someone that can edit your shows, do all your uh, podcast images, upload all of those things. Again, if you have that resource of, okay, I'm just on the mic, then that's fine. But just understand that trade off of that element. So like I said, you got post recording, you have post production, and post production can go multiple ways. Like I said, with recording or with editing, editing can either be a smooth transition of just you listening to make sure there's no hiccups, no anything you got to change, or something could have been said that if the audio person is there, they will remember when you get to that point to keep an ear out for it and make changes. Either, and I've I've kind of snatched the snippet a little bit with this, where it's either going to be I may delete it, I may scrub it where it's there, but you can't hear anything. Some people put like sound effects over it. My newest one that I've done is I reverse it. Now, reversing it can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And the reason I'm saying that is because some people may be able to go back and listen to the audio a certain way to reverse the scrubbing of that part. But you want to listen to that. There's a term that's used with podcasting. I've probably made this term myself, but there's what's called audio clips or audio clipping, where the audio will sound fine, and then you'll hear like a clip or a break in the audio. It ain't nothing you did. It could be something that either the software did, either your hardware between your microphone or your um, computer did, and it causes so that the recording isn't able to be fluidly shared. And it happens. It's nothing to like, you don't, the show isn't over. Or you don't like throw the whole podcast away. Now, the element to this, you will have an audio clip that can occur, but you can also have what's considered as the audio just outright didn't pick up at all. So that's why that's where your pre sound checks, that's where you're um, paying attention to your audio levels. And I didn't even get into that. That's something I forgot to, between pre-production and during the recording is very key. And people who worked in or done anything related to audio, they understand this 100%. And that is, um, they look at, okay, if you're recording, green is good. And my friend said this, and when he said it, I was like, this is actually the best way to describe it. Green is good, red is bad. And what that means is if you're too loud or too close to your microphone, you'll get red marks during the show. And this is important because when you're uploading or distributing to said platforms, people are not going to want to be in a position of listening to your podcast either in the car or on their headset or wherever, and having to like adjust the volume because either you're too loud or you're too soft. But if you're using the right audio application, which I would recommend, and I've gotten different discussions with this. I use Adobe Audition. If Adobe Audition is too much for the cost, if you're a Mac user, I'd say use GarageBand. If you don't like GarageBand and it's too complicated, I would use Audacity. Audacity can also be complicated. So you have to find something. The main goal, and I'm saying this all the time, I always make this like a message without being a message. You got to make the main thing the main thing. So if you need to do research on a good audio service that can record podcasts, do your Googles, do your searches to see what is out there that's to your liking and to your style. And you find that, you upload, you download the software and find a video that gives you kind of an overview of how that program or platform works. And then from there, you're in business. So from that point, and that element helps because then when you're doing your editing, you can see, okay, I get a little higher here, or I'm talking too much into the microphone. Like all of those elements play such a huge part in, I want to say day in the life, but in the flow and the structure of recording or uploading. And this is relevant because now you're put in a position, whether it's you doing it for your own podcast or the audio engineer, if you have one, having to come in and get the audio at a good sound so that everyone hears you and hears what you're saying. Because you got to think of it, whether a person is listening from a pair of wireless headphones, whether they're listening from a speaker, whether they're listening from their car, whether they're listening from the phone directly without speaker, without a headset. All of those things are thought about without you knowing you have to think of with a recording. And this is key and this is important because you're then having to consider how to make your show sound good, sound crisp, sound clear. So if your show is a lengthier show, now let me be again personal Brian things, but it's what works for me, so I ain't tripping. But I don't edit. I edit pretty much majority of my shows. When I say edit, I mean I listen to them and make sure there's no hiccups and no delays or whatever. However, I have personally found, this is my thing, that whenever I do my walkcasts don't really require a lot of editing. And the reason why, it's kind of coming up as an example, so there are sound effects, but there's natural elements that I want to keep as part of the show. So sometimes when I record, I'm very aware, very cautious of, okay, I'm loading this show or I'm playing it through my headphones or I'm recording through my earbuds or whatever. So I want to be sure when the audio comes in, it's coming in through the earbuds and not through the phone. So I've done it a couple times where the recording will seem like it's okay, but it's battling. It's almost like it's battling itself in the, I don't even say another realm, but in another world on a different application or a different platform. And you have to think of those things when recording. Like and what I mean by that is, okay, I recorded the show. I put my phone, we're starting to walk cast using my phone. Got my earbuds connected, but the connection doesn't happen for the recording app. So now when I open the recording app, start talking, put my phone in my pocket, think nothing of it. And I'm like, why did the audio sound so bad? And the reason being is it was catching me talking, but I was talking directly to the phone and not to my AirPods or whatever earbuds I'm using. That's why many times you will hear people make mention of just use, if you're able to use, go wired. Wired headphones will 100% of the time do what you needed to do 100% of the time. So if I plug in headphones directly into my USB port, everything's cool. Everything's great. And for some that can be like, well, I ain't never think of it like that. And it's like, yeah, because you gotta factor in like your your audio element of, I won't say element of surprise, but just the audio factor as a whole. So I got to that whole spiel and still didn't get to the distribution. But yeah, you do your audio edit. Or I'm usually doing my audio edit, listening to it, make sure there's no hiccups, no delays, anything of that nature. Then I go to um I personally, so I make a image for the podcast. So when everyone sees like episode whatever, they see the episode number. I picked an image. I've got the image ready for tagging the podcast. And I also have the image ready for when I distribute it on whatever platform I'm using, which everyone knows I'm a Buzzsprout guy. Shout out to Spreaker because if it weren't for Spreaker, I wouldn't have got to Buzzsprout and I wouldn't even really be doing podcasting if I'm being honest, but another talk for another day. So the the audio the image is created. Then you want to work on like I call it like a quick blurb that you're gonna write to kind of introduce what the show will talk about or get into. Now, if you remembered the show, you can write it out right after the show and it makes it a lot easier. Or
while you're listening to the show, what were some key elements or key things that you talked about, and kind of your thoughts or your feels towards those things, and make that simple. Put a couple of hashtags, and um, this is where it gets a little tricky, but this is where I'm glad that I was doing what I did before to do what I'm doing now. And what I mean by that is I was managing or I kind of did like a web service of, okay, my podcast is on Spreaker, but I want to be sure it's like on a website, say like a WordPress. And that page was managed to do like it was a hosting, like I had the page hosted, and I say WordPress, but I use like a page to just put each episode and like how I would add um embed or place the link for the podcast in those shows or in those on that site. And that kind of had me spinning and going with doing like the full process. Now, to be realistic, I don't do it now, but what I used to do was I would record my show, and literally right after I finished the show, I would go to Starbucks, Panera. If I was in the right place of doing it, I would stay at the library. If I was at a library or if I was near a library, I would go to the library, do the editing, get it done, get it out the way, out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes it's not that simple now because like a lot of stuff has changed, a lot of routines have transitioned. So it is what it is. But I'm getting ahead of things a little bit. But why I'm saying all of that is because with the podcast snippet, and like I have a lot of links for the show, like promo codes or things that I've talked about during the show. I will I pretty much have like a Word document for every single show that I've done, or a Google Doc that I can go to and have the document. I have all of the information in the document. It's all of it's pretty much just about there. And I use one, like if I'm on, like let's say I just did episode 416, I will use 415 and make a copy of 415, use it for 416 and update it based on that. Um, is she leaving this morning? Um, so using that and doing that has been like really, really, really helpful. Um, and I put the show out there, done all the recording, all the tidbits, things of that nature. I'm gonna talk in a second, but I'm just seeing what's going on. My intuition is one of a kind because I'm like, and I said, I don't mind talking about it. So there was a car that pulled up in front of where I'm at, and it stopped, and I'm like, okay, maybe this might be somebody coming for some folks I know. And as I'm looking, it wasn't. So I was like, let me pause this. Let me pause right here. And then I turn, and where I'm sitting, someone's at the front door, like looking out, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't know what was going on because I saw the light on." I'm like, "All right, well, I'm sitting here, like I'm outside." So, and she probably didn't factor in or doesn't think that I'm doing my morning walk. So, I just finished it like maybe 10 minutes ago. But, um, yeah, using the Word doc and putting all the links, copying that document, using changing it to whatever the new episode number is, and then putting in the information at the top. I only change two parts of it. I will change the top part of what the message, what I've just talked about, and then I change the bottom if I added or there were any external links that weren't in the initial recording. Why this is important and why this is relevant is because those this whole this whole part or this whole piece is used when I distribute it through my podcast platform. And I also use the title part for I use the blurb or the discussion of what the show is about for my Instagram post. And this is ways to simplify doing your show. Or it's kind of almost like a streamlined thing. I'm not, and as much as everyone's on the AI wave, yes, I'm on the AI wave too. I don't automate this if I don't have to, because if you automate it, it can get out of hand. So I think about things like that. But you've now got everything prepared to just about upload your podcast. Now, let me give a fair warning because this is me and it's just my natural instinct. You don't have to tag a podcast if you choose not to. Many people don't know or don't think of tagging their podcast because they're not on that type of time or in that type of space with their podcast. And there's 100% nothing wrong with that. Because I've done shows for so long, I do the tagging for my own records, but also for making it all unravel like it needs to. So if I'm doing a show and I'm like, oh, I did episode 416, what was 416's like the file itself? How did it look? How was it set up? So I will make sure that the showing of it is done properly. And when I upload it online, it's a much more streamlined look. So you got all of that out of the way. Now we ready to do the fun stuff that ain't all that pleasing, but the finalized part, which is to put the audio, say place the audio file through whatever distribution podcast service you use. A lot of people use Libsyn, which I thought Libsyn was dope. Uh, Podbean is Libsyn and Podbean were like two of the top dogs in podcasting at one time. I had known about them, but I wasn't when I first started doing podcasting, I wasn't at that point with podcasting at all. I found it when I did, and I used Spreaker, like I mentioned earlier. Now, I will be 100% honest, and I don't want to say this to be have ill will or be uncertain. I don't know if Spreaker is still Spreaker. It would not surprise me if it still is, but Spreaker made changes that I personally was not a fan of, not in a bad way, but just in the sense of how I looked to do podcasting. And Spreaker's still out there. Let's see. Oh dang, they starting. Oh, they done bumped up their whole business. They're tied. So they're tied in. Yeah, they're connected with iHeart. So that makes sense. So if you go pro, you get you can do unlimited podcasts for $20 a month. That's not bad actually. I mean, you're not because now in that sense, you're not limited to like how much you want to record. So I mean, Spreaker would work. Because I think right now with Buzzsprout, I get 12 hours a month, and I think it's I don't remember the exact amount. I know it's like at least I think it's like 18. I think it's like 18 a month. So it's, give or take. Like 12 hours of podcast, and I personally don't record that much now, but I'm, working on that. Just obviously I'm saying that, but then I'm getting ready to upload a 1 hour show. So yeah, no, yeah, do what you do. But you use your distribution source, like I said, Libsyn, Podbean, uh, Spreaker, Buzzsprout. There are Anchor. I think Anchor now is with Spotify. Spotify can distribute your podcast. They'll distribute it through their platforms first, and then over time, because the main thing you're needing is an RSS feed. And if you have the RSS feed, it's a few ways that it works. It either works as, okay, cool, you have an RSS feed, we'll get it approved through Apple Music, I mean through iTunes or through Apple Podcasts. Once Apple Podcasts clears your show, then your show is able to go on other platforms, things of that nature. The other option is depending on what platform you use, they have those resources baked in. So with Buzzsprout, every distribution option that I needed was all available through Buzzsprout. So um, Apple Podcasts, Google, well, when they were out, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, or Amazon, like through the Alexa, through iHeartRadio, Intune, Pandora. Like I think I've shared it before. Like Pandora was how my show kind of got its blow up moment from an episode I did about Steve Jobs. So I say all that to say, you distribute every option that you can get your podcast on, the more spaces that it's in, the more you can get to the right people. So like certain podcast platforms like Pocket Cast, Acast, um, you want to reach those, you want to reach every resource without making yourself have to do as much work. So then once you have your feed, then you get your show, to be distributed. But whatever information that goes out there, if it asks for an image of the show, you want to place that and then upload it, and then it's online. And then once it's distributed, then you now have your podcast. And from there, most people, people kind of go through their mixed states where they're upload to other social media platforms. Like I used to be big on, okay, I'm gonna post it on Facebook, I'm gonna post it on Twitter. And a lot of times it's like I don't record it. I'll do my promos on platforms and a few, but it's mainly just getting the show out there because a lot of people, now and thinking about it now, like it may be resourceful and beneficial to start doing it since I have the verified option. So I may start. I'm actually going to post today the show that I did. The shows that I uploaded yesterday, I'm going to upload them on like shared on Twitter, on both of my Twitter pages. Um, I still wish we had TweetDeck, and I know that has nothing to do with nothing, but I think about that from time to time too, of where distributors like how you could simplify and streamline your process for uploading. But another talk for another day. But that explains or kind of gives the rundown in a roundabout way with different breaks and intermissions of how the life cycle of a podcast goes. Because as I mentioned, many times it's you record the show, you upload the show, show's out there, you're done. But there's a lot of added pieces or moving elements that people don't think of or don't look into until you're actually like doing a show. And it's like, oh, so you got to do all this. I'm like, yeah, you got to do quite a bit to get a show to its proper audience and to reach its final destination. So that is that on that. And I will be back to doing some more organic walkcasts. I just did this one because it popped up in my head this morning, and I was like, let me go ahead and get it out there. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will catch you all next time.
Truly hope you all enjoyed the show. Definitely was a lot to unpack, but I know you'll walk away with something important. As I share at the end of each season, do find your way to get into podcasting if it's something you would like to do. My podcasts are currently recorded via Buzzsprout. Been very good to me. If you want to learn more about using them, definitely hit me up at thepastbtpod@gmail.com. And also the microphone that you're hearing me on is the Blue Yeti X. Have been rolling with it for over 3 years. We've been doing this ride for quite some time, so I hope someone could find this mic useful. Again, find those people who are good or helpful in what you're trying to do to be better today than you were yesterday. The primary goal is to be 1% better. Hope you all have an amazing day, and we'll be back again to do this next time.